Captain's Log Supplemental.
Hey Jeremy, you know those race cars you're busy building?
Yeah, I
You,
do. I
you,
got one
you
that I'm looking at every day.
you know what I don't see you working on?
You don't see me working on the amazing Sentinel system yet.
That's true. It would take all of 10 minutes for you to have one.
And it's very quick and easy to install.
It is. It is. And we could watch you when we are not at the race with you and see how you're doing. And then we can call you up when you get out of the car and tell you everything you did wrong.
And I love that because so many years I've been driving and not been able to see what I'm doing.
I know.
And now we can.
I know. You know what I'd like to do with the video? My most favorite thing is I take the video and I load it on YouTube and then I send it to my coach and say, look at 26 minutes and 17 seconds. Look at this one lap and tell me what I can do better. And every single time, you know what they say?
Everything.
Exactly. Precisely. So with the Sentinel system, you get instantaneous feedback plus useful feedback that unfortunately is accurate for my driving.
I think it's accurate for all of our driving.
Pretty much. Yeah, that's probably true. Yep. But you need to get one in your car, sir.
Yes, I do. And with the discount code that you're going to tell everybody, they can save 10% on this awesome system.
Yep. Trouble free. I haven't had an issue getting video every time we've gone out with the Sentinel. It's always worked. Can't say the same for some of the other systems we've tried. So I don't know. It's on the podcast notes down there. Don't do it while you're driving though. We like to have our listeners live. It's good.
From the great halls of their house, there are assembled three who hope to one day be the world's greatest driving heroes. Created from the cosmic legends of the universe comes our team captain, the Vision, Bill Fisher, and their soon-to-be Wonder Woman, Vicky Fisher, and our Captain Marvel and head flight trainee, Jennifer Scripchuk. Their mission: to fight injustice, share what is right and wrong, to get you out of your house and come out racing with them and serve all mankind. They are the Garage Heroes in Training Team.
Welcome to the Garage Heroes in Training podcast. We have a guest. We have a topic.
We do.
Who knew? My name is Bill. Who else is hosting?
I'm Vicky.
Who's our guest?
I'm Kaan Canturk.
Yes, he is host of the Blind Apex podcast. He primarily can be found in the Mid-Atlantic Honda Challenge area, although he does do Hyperfest, which I think is technically Mid-Atlantic, but I'm not quite sure.
It is.
Okay. But we're still trying to talk him into coming up here and seeing what goes on with a little bit of endurance racing. We have a seat that will fit his butt.
You can probably talk me into that.
Especially
is it Cookie the car with
the
No.
cookie is the car, although it's not a cookie anymore.
Okay,
Yeah.
That's fair. That's
That
fair.
theme- that
But it's a
theme was
front wheel
well
drive
done.
Honda, so it's in my
Yeah.
wheelhouse.
It is. It is. It is. And
I
that's the
never
one
met a racer
we're
who
fixing.
said no. They're usually like a free seat. If it's free, it's me.
Yeah, pretty much. So, Kaan,
Yes, sir.
we've met in meet space. We interact routinely in e-space.
Yep.
We've been on the podcast a couple times. You're getting close to your shirt for being on 5 times. It's close. You're almost
Okay.
there. But in case people have missed some of the earlier episodes where you appeared, could you give a little brief intro?
Yeah, sure. I'm Kaan, obviously the host of the Blind Apex podcast, and I have a Honda problem. I
Nice.
race Honda Challenge H2, and yeah, I went full in. So I spent 10 years or so in the NASA Mid-Atlantic Tech Shed and then quit so I could go racing myself. And that's what I'm doing these days. Well, that and working a full-time job to pay for it. But yeah,
What engine is in your Hondas?
it's a K20 Z3 It's the poor person's new K series Type R type engine. It shares
Oh,
a lot of the same part numbers, and it shares the same liters, similar cam profiles, not the same. Um, but yeah, it's a K series car. K native, it's a 2007 Civic Si coupe. It's a FG2 for the nerds with that want to care about the chassis codes.
Hmm.
Um, yeah, so we spin it to 9,000 RPMs and we put a ridiculous final drive in it and we let her eat.
So if we were to translate that, because Miss Vicky's only dealt with D series and has
Mhm.
heard about K
and I have
series,
and I heard about a K.
yes, and she has a K, but I don't think it's the same K.
It's not the same.
Not the same.
No,
Okay.
you have the fancy K with turbo and stuff that goes psh, psh.
Yeah.
So,
She's
but
she's she's quite happy with that K, by the way.
yes, yeah, I would be too, to be honest.
Is that
I
the
wish I
Integra?
could get a street card. Yeah, your Integra has one.
Hmm. Yep.
So it is a different K series motor, but it's a evolution of the motor I drive. So they went
Oh,
for a little more economical in certain areas and like how they set up the turbo system, but also they still kept a lot of the reliability, robust bottom end, things like that.
Hmm.
that sucker eats gas.
Your right foot is causing that.
Oh, is it?
Yes.
Yes.
I'll
Yes.
have to take a look at that.
She's one of the people who thinks that the route number is the speed limit. So
Okay. Yeah. Yeah. My
I'm all
brother and sister-in-law got a 1.5 liter turbo Accord and they get almost 50 miles to the gallon out of it. So,
I just know that I ate almost a tank of gas just going between here and Philly.
you've got a
And
small
just
tank. Oh,
locally, I will eat a tank of gas in just a couple days.
but
oh
your
wow.
tank is this small.
Oh, is
Is
it?
it
Yeah.
like a 10 gallon,
Yeah, it's a
11
10.
gallon?
It's a 10.
Okay.
I think it's 10.
Mm.
Honda loves 10-gallon tanks. I don't know what their problem is, but
It's either 10-gallon tank or effectively 10-gallon because you're so low, you just fill it and you get about 10 gallons in it. So,
okay.
yeah. So,
That's too new and fancy for me.
Mm-hmm.
well, it is one of our favorite cars we've ever had. So, highly
It
recommend.
is fun
That's
to
fair.
drive.
So, Con, we
Yes, sir.
we all love racing,
Hmm.
and racing is fun,
It is.
but sometimes it's not.
Mm-mm.
Not always.
Things go
There are
poorly.
moments.
Things go poorly,
Yeah,
either
for
due to
sure.
things you can control, things you didn't prepare for, or things you can't control.
And bad luck.
Hmm.
So if it if you've never had an issue, it's the motorcycle crash adage, you know. If it's not if but when. This is the same with racing. Nothing's ever broke on your car. It- just feel lucky about that, right? You've
Hmm.
never been off and met a tire wall. It's coming. And if it's not, you're probably not up front. I'll tell you that. In my region, the top half of the field, everybody pushing for a podium, they all go off at some point in a weekend almost.
Mm.
That's how hard do you have to push. And if you're
Yes.
pushing that hard to find that edge, you're going to be up front, but sometimes things will occur. You'll run out of talent. Everybody does at some point.
Well, by definition, the edge is the end and leads to a precipitous, and you will fall
Right.
into your precipice. And sometimes you go over 10.1 tenths, and sometimes you go over like a full 11. And a
Right.
full 11 is a bad day.
Mm-hmm.
So I thought the important part was A, that racing's not always rosy and not always fun. But sometimes the not fun stuff can be fun as well. But I think the more important thing is how you address it and how you deal with it. So I thought maybe we could go over some of the things that we've had happen to us,
Okay.
maybe even some stuff that we've seen. Um,
Hmm.
but and then how we responded to it. And there's a couple different ways of responding to it. There's the hey, how do I get this sucker back on track? Which most everybody in the paddock would help. And all the racing I've ever been to, they want you back on track.
Right.
And B, how do you fix it long term? That could be mechanically, that could be driver aid, that could be a variety of different things. And I thought maybe those would be illustrative to a few of our people who haven't done this, and funny to the people who have. So,
I think you put it really well earlier. Is if something happens on the track and you have to bring that car in, you refer to it as car triage.
mhm.
And that's a good way of putting it because you still want it to go.
And
But
so do
what are you
your,
going to do to get it back on track?
in most cases, so do your competitors,
Mm-hmm.
you know?
Oh, and if they don't, they're not really there to compete. They're there to try to collect a plastic trophy or a wooden trophy or whatever they're handing out. So,
Mhm.
Right.
Indeed. So, Khan, you have the most, well, is it the most recent? Who broke most recently? I think you got us by a week.
did I get you guys by a week?
It's plus or
Hmm.
minus. We're gonna say you had you win, Khan.
Okay.
What's your most recent challenge?
My most recent challenge is actually a repeat incident, um, where I had a AP racing caliper have a bridge line failure or crossover tube failure. They're either
And
called
what is
bridge lines, crossover tubes, or equalizing tube. So on a multi-pot caliper, um, there's either a channel that's built into the caliper itself that equalizes the pressure on
mm-hmm.
each side of the caliper, or there's a bridge line. Um, so, 3 weeks ago or so, 4 weeks ago at Summit Point Raceway, data says 127 and a half miles an hour. I went to go stab the brakes to get me woed up for turn one, and my foot went to the floor.
Oh no.
Yep. Yep. And it was
And what track again was that?
Summit Point,
Okay.
the greatest racetrack on earth. Um, so, um, I literally had an episode working on braking with Tom O'Gorman. Shout out to Tom. I was working through. This is not the first time that occurred, and it's not the first time that occurred in that it happened once before in the same corner, same track, slightly slower because I wasn't carrying as much speed through turn 10. So anyway, the last time I was about 2 miles an hour or slower, and I actually got the car to turn. This time I did not get it to slow down. I tried to make it turn. The rear end wanted to step out. I did not want to back in to the tire wall with my brand new carbon fiber trunk. So I was hoping that I could see where I was going, guide myself, and slow the car before I hit the tire wall. And that's what happened. So always remember to release the steering wheel right before you hit anything, by the way. It's very important.
Once
Did
you
you
know
save
you can't, let go.
Yes. Yes, absolutely.
did you save the
Uh,
trunk?
oh,
Was the
yeah, I saved
bumper?
the trunk, but I
Okay.
required a new OEM bumper, a new OEM fender, some of all of the plasticky retaining bits that
Mm-hmm.
come on, or, that you bolt everything together with or clip things together with. It required paint. And at this point, I sent my calipers out for recertification again, and they will now collect us somewhere behind me, likely. And I went
Mm.
to a whole new brake kit. I don't want the psychological battle that I had for almost a year and a half, 2 years. So,
Do you know
um,
why they keep failing? Is it just a repetitive? Is it a brand thing? We're not going to mention a brand, but is it a
well,
brand
I
thing?
already did, but
Mm.
um,
Oh,
Late
sorry.
I
to
s-
not mention a
It
brand.
did. It didn't sound like a brand, so I didn't even.
oh, okay. The
I didn't
the
register it as a brand.
the bougie nerds will know that
Okay.
about the brand, but um, I asked for a reason why it could be happening. The tech that did all the testing on the caliper only put that it was losing pressure through the crossover tube. So that was replaced and the whole caliper was reserviced.
Mm-hmm.
Um, it didn't explain why. Nobody's given me a reason why. And so I've abandoned that
You're dead to
caliper set
me.
up. Basically, it happened twice,
Right.
and I was told the first time by the rebuilder, they're the sole importer of those calipers, and they rebuild them here in the United States, that this was an absolute fluke.
Hmm.
Well, it happened on one side, and now, 8, 9 races later, it happened on the other side. So
Mm.
So
it's not a fluke.
short term, I believe you parked it for the weekend, if I remember right.
Yeah. So let me start off with you were talking about, if it happens to you or when it happens to you during the good times, and it's going to happen around you. You're going to see it happen. I wholeheartedly believe in track karma. So, what I do is if I see somebody in distress or somebody coming with a rollback and they're paddocked anywhere near me, I'm going to go help,
Mm-hmm.
and you go over and they're like, "Hey, I'm going to need 2 jacks to get this car off the rollback." And I'll be like, "I'll go grab mine," assuming they have one or whatever, and just help people.
Hmm.
And that's a network. You're networking now with those
Mm-hmm.
folks. You may not have talked to them. They could be 5 or 6 paddock spots down, and you have your crew and your clique or whatever, but everybody's going to go through it at some point. So it's time to pay it forward. You meet people, they own businesses, they also know people. Um, so if you get stranded, wrecked, whatever happens, they're going to be the next helping hand for you. So,
Hmm.
and remember, if it's not if, it's when. So just
It's not
pay it forward.
uncommon to come off the track and all of a sudden have 7 guys under your hood,
Yeah.
For
all with
sure, for sure.
mechanical experience. It is not uncommon.
Yeah, I do the same
Correct.
thing. If something happens to somebody else's car, I immediately send Vicky over there.
So, yeah, I mean, that's part of paying it forward. So when it happens to you, some people are coming to you. I knew that as soon as I went off. I knew it as soon as it was bent. I actually drove it out of the gravel trap, so I don't know how good the gravel trap is. If I can drive my car out of it, it should have been buried and had to get yanked out, but hey, whatever. Um, as far as I'm concerned, but yeah. So as soon as I got back into the paddock, it was triage time, and I
Mm-hmm.
was not the only one. And so most of the people that were helping me, it was very superficial. They wanted to know what was going on, and then they were looking over the car. Okay, if we remove the bumper, or let's pull the bumper, tape it up, remove the splitter because that's a total loss, but let's tape up your bumper, get you, gaffer taped, they were pulling on the fender that was bent already. I mean, they were ready to send it, but I didn't have a spare caliper.
Mm-hmm.
Shame on me. I didn't want to spend more thousands of dollars, so
Right.
I didn't have a backup set, and so I actually had to sit for the weekend. Yeah.
Mm.
So so why did you change? I guess we could go way back. What were you looking for?
Why?
What didn't you have that you were looking for the fix?
Were the
Or,
brakes?
yeah, for the upgrade. Yeah.
Oh, um, well, the eighth gen Civic that I have comes with probably similar sized front calipers to what is or what was or is on your Endurance EG.
Hmm.
Mm-hmm.
So, but you're talking about a minimum 200 horsepower car that on the street in street weight weighs around 3,000 pounds. In race trim, I come in at about 25 or 27, 25.
Hmm.
Those brakes are woefully
Right.
inadequate. It's
Mm-hmm.
well known in the community. Even autocross kids are like, these are pretty bad, but if they sometimes they can't change them in their class. But
Hmm.
anyway,
Mm-hmm.
the first thing I did was go to a OEM based Brembo kit. So it
Okay.
was Brembo's off an Acura TLS, and it was not S2000 rotors. I forget the rotor that I had. Excuse me. But in the So I also had leaking brake issues with that car. And that car didn't have a bridge. It had this little rubber gasket in the
Hmm.
middle of the two halves of the thing.
Hmm.
And it took me, I don't know, between both sides, at least a couple tries a piece to get it sealed correctly.
Right.
Um,
So
so
it was a capacity or feel of the brake, or was it temperature that was causing? Because we've had a problem where we just didn't have enough brake, or we didn't have enough brake cooling, or we didn't have enough brake pad, or it just
so
wasn't it.
so
And
the
yours was probably not enough of all of it.
yeah, the initial brake set, the stock brake set on the car is not enough of all of it. And so I went for more clamping force and a bigger rotor. Bigger rotor does a couple of things. Bigger in height. Uh, it does add some thermal capacity, but it gives you leverage in your braking. And then it was also thicker, so it gave me even more thermal capacity. So I had a
Hmm.
lot of thermal capacity. And on everyone's beloved Raybestos ST43s, it didn't need any cooling. So
Yep.
it ran
Hmm.
great. But in a pursuit to go to the front, and an offer by a company to help develop a brake kit, which, by the way, the replacement brake kit is their production version of the prototypes I was running previous. Um, so I trust them. It's just a fluke thing, and I just wanted the confidence. But I went to do this prototyping because it saved me 20 pounds per corner
Wow.
of weight.
Wow.
So the stock TLS Brembos are boat anchors.
Hmm.
The rotors we were using did not come in a two-piece. There was no two-piece option, and they were probably 22 pounds a rotor.
Mm.
They're huge.
Yeah.
So I needed to save weight. I wanted to save rotational mass. I wanted to save weight off the front of the car. This was a good deal to help prototype the brakes. And so I took it. So,
Right. So
Hmm.
sometimes when you fix your car, you didn't fix it, right? I think we've all done that.
well, I can tell you that it was when they don't break, when the brakes don't break, they're
Hmm.
this set is leaps and bounds ahead of the traditional TLS rotor setup that you put on the car
Oh.
by almost 30% shrinking of the
Wow.
braking zone. It's a lot. So,
Yeah. So what we did in our car is like almost half the horsepower. It's probably
mhm.
slightly more. We just did the Mini Cooper rotors with the Integra knuckles, and it's okay for what we have.
Yeah, and I mean it's very Honda specific, but those are I know lots of guys that are running on those, but if your car is above 2,500 pounds,
Hmm.
2,600 pounds, they start to show their weaknesses.
Yeah. There's only
Hmm.
so
So
much.
yeah, there's only so much they can handle.
Hmm.
And my car was bigger, running big power, good torque. Um,
And you were
so I
going
needed
10
bigger.
tenths or trying to.
So
Yeah, I was probably going 11 tenths.
what is the normal setup for like again, we have a D series for, you know, that's where we're at. But as you level up, what becomes a standard caliper or knuckle setup?
Well,
Well, early on, um, folks will do that Integra Type R, Acura Legend, NSX caliper. They're all the
Mhm.
same. Well, they're not the same. They're different, but they take the same pad shape and they have
mhm.
the same bolt pattern. So you can
Mhm.
bolt that on, and then you put that Mini Cooper rotor on, and it runs folks who run at 2,500 pounds. It runs them pretty well.
Mhm.
Um, Pad selection is important, so you don't overheat the smaller disc of the Mini Cooper rotor.
Mhm.
But it's effective. On my previous car, I had a 2000 EM1. It's another SI coupe. Uh,
Mhm.
I was running a Integra Type R engine, B18C5 for the nerds, 190 horsepower, I think, in that car, 2,500 pounds. I don't remember, 180, 190, whatever. Less than I am now, but also less weight.
Mhm.
And for a while, I was on an ITR brake caliper and the Mini Cooper rotor. And eventually, I the faster you get, the more I couldn't feel the brakes. that
Mhm.
well. And I was tired of flat spotting tires, so I went to I think the new standard is the Porsche 986 calipers, the Hund Industries,
Mhm.
Mm-hmm.
Hund Development, I think is what their actual name is. They do that kit. It's very popular with the Euro guys, so E36 M3 guys do it sometimes.
Right.
Volkswagens do it, and now they make a kit for the Hondas. But
And we have
I
a
did a
friend.
write up on it. I did a lot of research.
I was saying we have a friend who's I believe that's what he did, and he's very happy with the FCP Euro return plan as well.
Yeah, hi. We can name names. It's fine.
That's fine.
Mm-hmm.
He, I wish I knew about the FCP Euro thing because I was destroying Mini Cooper rotors and going through a lot of Hawk DTC 60s at the time.
Yeah.
So it would have been really helpful.
Mm.
But yeah, that's probably the new basic setup. And there's lots of two-piece rotor options now. I think uh, s- one of the brake kit companies makes a Willwood based two-piece for it. And then there's another, I think it's called Wrench Mafia or something. They make a two-piece for it also now. So you can go lighter. But I know national champions that don't run two-piece rotors, so it's not necessary all the time. But
Right. So you can do the parts bin engineering, or you can get the full aftermarket treatment, depending on what your budget and tolerance is. So,
yep, that's the solution. But everything has teething pains, you know. Did
mhm.
I expect to have this with the brand of caliper I had? No, but for confidence sake, I'm replacing it with
Mm-hmm.
another kit, you know. But the standard for the kit, I personally wanted to be able to run a rotor that came off of a production vehicle because, you know, God forbid you're spending a week, say we take a trip to the Nationals, wherever that is, you're there for a week. Okay.
Mhm.
Um, maybe you pop a ring and you put your backups on and then something happens to your backups. You got to have another way to put rotors on the car. You don't spend the money for a national level event and spend that much time and not have a way around it. So
That's
Right.
the one of the things we've noticed with people that have customized their cars a bit. Um, is once something goes bad, you're custom, so you really can't do anything. You're done. There's no place to go get parts. Gotta make it
yeah,
work.
when you go too custom, you also need to make sure that it is 100% bulletproof in the engineering
Mm-hmm.
and that if it has a maintenance life cycle, that you're all over that.
Mm-hmm.
Mhm. Indeed. Actually, our E46 is almost as bad at a race event. If something goes wrong with it, you better have brought it because they just don't exist in the flaps anyway. So, but
Hmm.
there's that. Miss Vicky, we've never had problems with brakes.
No, never.
Never.
Never. Well, you know.
Except when our brakes were overheating or catching on fire.
Yes, when they actually caught fire, yes, I did.
Yes.
It was that.
So we
But
were
we didn't
battling.
know what we didn't know at the time. We still actually don't know. Um, only have best guesses, I believe.
Okay. But in the end, it ended up that we were having heat issues, and they were resulting in either pad uh, exceeding the temperature where they have friction, or getting to the point where they catch on fire, and less than helpful because then you've got to replace your pads and your calipers. So that was kind of bad, and it turned out that what we had done was we had started modifying the front of the car to get better aerodynamics, but in the pursuit of aerodynamics, we reduced all of the air that goes to the brakes. So we modified the aero and added brake ducting, and everything was fine after that. But it was, the thing is, we had that problem like 3 or 4 times, and Con, you had the same brake issue twice. It's not
Hmm.
it's not a straightforward, oh, this is what you do and you fix it. Like sometimes it takes a while, and each of these events cost you time and money. So the best thing you can do is avoid it whenever possible, or go with a proven solution, um, hopefully from a friend of yours or a forum, or God forbid you have to search Facebook or something like that, because I can't find anything in
Right.
Facebook. But, you know, actually, Facebook just turned off our Friends of GHiT group, so I don't know why, but whatever. So if you're looking for Friends of GHiT, so am I.
Yeah.
Don't know why.
You were
Miss Vic,
spamming too much.
in my own group, I know, terrible. I hate when I do that. Every single episode, I was trying to have like one little group that had every single episode blurb.
Mm-hmm.
I had it up to a point, but that's okay. It just disappeared like last week. But anyway, Miss Vicky, we've never done anything wrong at a track. We've never had a problem.
No, never. No, of course we have. I mean, that's how we just basically started out was is just a series of errors. And that's all it was. Collective errors is how we got through our first couple years.
Mm-hmm.
And then we
Here,
just kind of started figuring it out because again, walking into racing and not really having a strong background in it, you just at best guess you learn by your mistakes. And we had lots and lots and lots and lots of them.
do you have any favorites?
Oh my gosh, there was just too many. I don't know, the trailer falling off the truck. That was one. Um, oh, Jennifer wrecking the car, breaking her ribs. That was one.
Okay, so
Learned from that one too.
let's pick one and get into it a little bit, then, shall we?
I don't know. I'll let you pick one.
Should I pick your favorite one?
Sure.
So there I was, Con.
Mm-hmm.
We had been having trouble with the truck, the race truck, the trophy truck.
Okay.
And Vicky was still relatively new in her mechanicdom, and I had the level of expertise that I still have. So we sought external advice from friends who were
Right.
in the job. So I'm talking to them, and they're like, "Yeah, yeah, just bring it by." And I'm like, "But we didn't have
Oh,
a
yes.
trailer at the time." So he's
Mm-hmm.
like, "Oh, don't worry about it. Just take the back streets at an off hour. You'll be fine. You'll be fine." So there I am driving our trophy truck,
7 o'clock in the morning.
7 o'clock in the morning, back streets with my son following me, and our tire comes off as we're rounding one of the turns, and bounds over a couple bushes, through some trees, and into a house where we proceeded to hit the gas line for the house. And our nice, quiet, subtle drive in the morning turned into, four police cars, three fire trucks, couple helicopters. It was great. So
Helicopters. Did you run?
no, I didn't run. They just were there to, witness my greatness. And I think the favorite part for Miss Vicky was the one policeman that was late, arrived quite angrily, and
And why was he angry?
well, he insulted my car with expletives. And it turns out that he had gotten his new patrol truck the night before, and on the way over to my glorious incident, hit a deer in his brand new police cruiser pickup truck. And apparently I look like the daddy of that deer to him, because he was less than pleased with me. So he decided to tell me a few stories about what my expletive deleted car truck looked like, and why is it on his road. So it turned out everything was fine, but it was just a simple matter of, we had at that time we had probably five or six people working in the garage, and when you start having multiples of people, you don't know who's done what.
Mm-hmm.
And it was just a simple matter of nobody tightened the lug nuts. But the car was on the ground, so in my mind, cars on ground, lug nuts are tight, we are good to go. So we have several garage rules that if the car is on the ground, the lug nuts are tight and torqued, and the hood pins are in. Because we had an incident with hood pin. I don't know if you've ever had this incident, Con, but hood pins are kind of critical when you have a hood that doesn't have a secondary catch.
Correct.
Otherwise, you drive behind a bunch of 100 Lemons cars through some expanded steel mesh windshield that you've did a field expedient repair on
Triage.
with poor welds because
Yeah.
the only Mustang windshield in the 3 hour radius was broken when it was pulled out of the car. So that was kind of a bummer. So
Yeah,
Yeah.
I've definitely had some hood pin windshield issues.
mhm.
You only
Again,
do it once,
We did it twice,
maybe
but
twice.
we did it twice just to make sure we could do it.
Yeah.
well, my issue was another failed part, not a I forgot to latch them. Most people's hood pin stories start with I forgot to latch them.
Mhm.
Mine starts with it was like lap 5 or 6 of qualifying for the Honda Challenge race at Hyperfest 2019. And I come down the front straightaway, and right there's a kink in the front straightaway. Right as I hit the kink, my hood pins failed. They're those push button hood pins.
Oh, the arrow
Oh,
catch
yeah.
kind of style.
No, no,
Yeah, we
they're
have,
the
I think we
uh
have those on
quick
the,
latch style.
Oh, okay.
yeah, we
So
have
there's a
those on
circle
the,
button.
what is it?
BMW.
E46.
Yes.
Yeah. So it took out my windshield, wrinkled my roof, and destroyed my carbon fiber hood. And so we basically, a buddy of mine who was there to help me, he goes, I'm going to start taking this broken glass, this windshield out because, well, you're definitely not going to be able to drive with that. And you should go see if you're allowed to drive without a windshield at all. So, and at the time I was like, well, I'm done. I can't drive at all. And he's like, just go ask. So he's a circle track guy. They do weird things. Sure enough, I go down to the tech shed, and their only requirement was every corner worker will have your car number. They will make sure your visor is all the way down, no cracks, all the way down, and you must remove your rear glass. And I could go race. So I came back with a smile on my face, and he goes, well, what else do we need to do? I said, well, let's vacuum the glass out of the car and let's remove the black Lexan, and then we can go race. So I drove around in a Roadster Honda for
Oh,
a
wow.
race. I didn't need a cool suit. It was very breezy. It was
I was gonna
nice.
say
Mhm.
that seems weird. I'm surprised.
But surprised that they'd let me.
Yeah.
Oh, they told me if I couldn't even go up to grid with a cracked wing visor on my helmet.
Wow.
It had to be completely down.
Hmm.
And so since that event, all the grid workers check my real old style hood pins because I refuse to use fancy ones anymore. I want the ones where it's metal with a piece of metal through it,
Mhm.
and they seem to be the most reliable. So,
Mhm. You
but
know
they
what?
still come and shake my hood.
You know what we do? We always leave the OEM catch as a secondary just in case.
Yeah, that
Just in
car had
case.
been abused a little bit. It was on a Chinese core support. So
Mm.
I'm not even sure if I left the stock one bolted to the Chinese core support, it probably would have ripped the stock one out
And
of
your
the core support.
radiator would have gone flying into the roof. That would have been fun.
Yeah, it could have been, yeah, that thing was flimsy.
Hmm.
Yep.
So, Miss Vicky, I think a lot of our initial issues
Mhm.
relied upon our lack of any mechanical knowledge,
Correct.
and that led to poor practices for inspection and repair replacement,
Mhm.
such
Absolutely.
such as we battled a power steering issue in the race truck for
Yes.
ever.
I think for about 2 years.
Probably, yeah. It seemed like 2 years, seemed like forever.
Yeah.
And Con, do you care to guess what our power steering issue was?
You didn't have any fluid?
No,
No.
we had fluid. We threw it all over the place.
Oh, yeah.
Oh,
Our
Well,
all of our ball joints and grease fittings were filled with sand.
Hmm. Because at
Hmm.
the time in our very early, uh, mechanical knowledge, we didn't know that in the off season that cars needed the maintenance that they do. So it wasn't until, and I've mentioned this on the podcast, that we had a mechanic friend that we were talking to, and he was on the podcast. I'm like, I don't understand. What do we work on in the off season? I mean, what do you do? And he says, you change things out that go whir. And I'm like, oh. So after we decided, our team had decided that we were just going to take this truck and we were just going to tear it down and,
Hmm.
just do a replacement on everything that all the consumables, and we're going to go and look at the suspension. That's when we pulled everything apart and we just noticed that they had just burst. All those ball joints were crushed and they were packed with sand and grit from the track. And I was like, here's our problem. Here's all the problem. And I think at that point, taking off the transmission, put a new flywheel on, put all new consumables. I think that was the year when we had done that with the race truck, because the race truck was very similar to like a Honda. It was just a basic machine.
Hmm.
It was a 93
Nothing,
Chevy, really.
nothing fancy. Um, and changing everything out and making all those adjustments. And and just putting your hands on it for people that aren't familiar and are new to mechanic work. Just getting in there and putting your hands on the car, your world just opens up. It really does. And I think that's when we began to understand the level of the things that had to be maintained, and in the off season the things that had to be changed out, and that certain parts in your car have a life cycle. And even though it's not bad, you should change it, because if not, you've just paid all that money to go to the track, and it just takes something to fail. The
Yeah.
life cycle of why wait till it breaks when you can just catch it before it breaks?
Well, I can tell you race cars themselves have a life cycle.
Mm-hmm.
The car itself,
So
yeah.
the car itself, eventually, with enough incidents in its lifespan, it will fail. So
Mm-hmm.
my 2000 EM1 Civic Si, it was a used race car that I bought as a roller, and um, it showed itself as the issue I had showed itself as I was breaking axles randomly, not at
Really?
the easy end, but within the transmission. So I
Oh.
have a handful of axle nuggets in the garage hanging out as mementos for me to remember. Eventually, you have to go over the car all the way. I can tell you that I went from standard old regular OEM axles to very expensive axles to all the stuff folks recommended to me. I was guaranteed to break one every event. So I was spending $400 or $500 aside on axles
Mm-hmm.
at the time. That was an added expense every event. And so um, finally, a friend of mine who works at a great shop down here in Chantilly area, GT Piece, Darren said,
Uh-huh.
give me the car. I'll look it over. And he had to drop the subframe to find where the frame rail and where the frame rail meets the firewall, it started buckling, but it was hidden. I crawled all over that car.
I
Mhm.
was going to say it has something to do with the body itself, the way you were describing it.
Yep. So the unibody was failing on that side where the frame rail met the firewall, and it was hidden by the subframe, and I didn't know. And
Wow. How did
and
he find it? Oh, he dropped everything.
well, he had it on the rack, and he put a pry bar on it, and he started wiggling it. He could wiggle with a 18-inch pry bar, and the
Yeah.
motor, everything strapped in. He could wiggle the the frame rail. So he started
Wow.
going back and back, and he goes, well, it's back behind here. So he dropped the frame rail a little bit, and there it was, crease. The car would take a couple hits on that side, and eventually metal fatigues. So you
Right.
can only bend it back so many times. So
Mm-hmm.
you
Wow.
need to be conscious of that, because
Mm-hmm.
it's important to realize, you keep slamming it on the same corner, it's not going to live that long. So,
Right.
Wow. I didn't even
And
the
the
stuff you don't
wear,
think about, that part of it.
but the wear interval is nothing like what's in the user manual. It's not like every 3,000 mile we change our oil. It's not like every
Right.
uh 30,000 miles you change your transmission fluid. It's racing is hard by definition.
yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I mean,
So,
we pulled the transmission to have the diff checked. We looked everywhere. I was dumbfounded. And eventually I had to give it to somebody when you're working off your back on jack stands, it's hard to see stuff anyway. So
sure.
Right.
Especially by
sometimes you need to
yourself.
give it to, yeah, especially by yourself. So sometimes you need a lift. Sometimes you need a hand. Sometimes you need a better set of eyes. You
Just
know,
a different set of eyes sometimes.
Yep. I spent hours laying on my back on that side of the car looking for anything. I didn't see it. So,
Well,
Yeah.
you wouldn't have. You just wouldn't have.
yep.
Remember when we found out that our engine mounts weren't good in the El Jefe trophy truck? You remember
Mm. The
what
El
did
Jefe trophy truck was a special truck.
it was?
Yeah.
There's a video of us pushing on the engine and it rocking like 4 or 5 inches.
Yeah.
Oh, wow. Okay.
It was lovely. Yes, we
But
we we learned mechanical.
I can say that that was the car that I think I started to get all the knowledge, and it kicked everything off for me.
Mhm. Good to know. The other thing, we're taking road cars. We're not buying purpose-built race cars. We're taking road cars and putting them through some rather rigorous testing.
Hmm.
Your car may have a weak spot. Like we had a 1974 Civic. I'm sorry, a 1974 Capri.
Hmm.
Uh, the transmission was made of, I believe the metal is technically known as glass. And it just it didn't like racing. It just had an old 4 speed, and one of our drivers didn't do any help to it by driving it in second gear for 3 laps, but that's
Oh,
fine.
wow.
That's fine. But if you read a forum, especially if it's a high performance forum or ideally a racing forum, and you find out what your weak spots on your car, those are things that need a little extra love and a little attention, you know, because we're subjecting them to forces and sustained forces for a very long time. And you just need to be careful with those things.
For
Does either
sure.
one of your cars have the notable soft spot, Con?
Well, n no, but yes. So, I'm a ham-fisted driver, so I love to, yank the wheel, and I love to mash on the gas and mash on the brakes, and becoming smoother has helped me. But one thing, warning for anybody with a K series car, K series transmission, they like to break third gear and fourth gear, depending on how you use it. So don't clutch dump. You need to start rev matching. Also, the shift forks have a little dinky ear on them. Usually drag racers break them, but road racers can break them if you're like me, where instead of just taking the miss shift, you just keep pushing it forward. It will bend that ear and eventually break that ear. So there are some gentle things you need to be. I'm much more dedicated in not forceful, but I'm like, okay, I'm going to third, and I'm just, I'm very, very conscious of how I shift now. And my transmission's been fine, but the first year I had that car, it was not fine. The
No.
transmission was out 4 times. One for a final drive change and one for bent shift forks, one for a blown synchro, which may have been caused by some leftover metal that was in there, and then something else. But um, and another thing related to the transmission, it's the vehicle speed sensor. So you guys don't have super new, well, your E46 is, but the newer your vehicle is that you're tracking, the more likely your electronics are integrated into everything.
Mm-hmm.
If you had a mechanical speed sensor, your car, from the 90s isn't going to care that the speed sensor is gone. It will basically just your speedometer stops working, right?
Right.
But in my car, it's tied into the ABS. It's tied into the computer that's controlling VTEC and all these other things. And it would essentially put me in limp mode. Just a vehicle speed sensor. It's like $8, $9 from Honda, brand new, but it failed. I have spares now, but
Right.
you never know what's going to happen. So, um, I wouldn't call that a weak part of the transmission. I found all those and I worked my way around them. But every car that's newer that has multiple computers and integrated ABS systems, you're going to have more difficulty or more challenges if one of those things fail. So carry spares.
Especially the obvious ones and the cheap ones.
Oh, yeah, for sure. And to be honest, you can find things on eBay super cheap sometimes. Um, People part out cars and they have a handful of sensors and it's worth buying them, in my opinion. Maybe they work, maybe they don't. You can test them when with a voltmeter when they come in. If they don't, they're so cheap. If you get half of them to work, you probably made money anyway.
Right. Um, Con, doesn't the K series, and speaking from reading, not from any data personally, doesn't the K series engines tend to vibrate things a bit?
Everything. It will
And
vibrate everything. So, um, the high performance oil pumps on these engines remove balance shafts. So I had the option of having a multi-piece, not simplistic oil pump, which would keep vibration down, or a very, very reliable oil pump that made the engine shake more. It also doesn't help that we put on these racing uh, engine mounts that are stiffer because engine movement in yaw while you're racing can mess you up. Um,
Mm-hmm.
so they transfer the vibration more efficiently or more effectively than the rubber stock ones. And yeah, they'll do it. And it comes all from the oil pump, essentially.
Mm-hmm.
It starts down there. There, if you were to pull the K series engine apart and weigh it and balance it, it's pretty darn close. At least the higher end ones, the Z3, the Type R, the A2, um, any of the A2s, the K24 A2 and the K20 A2, they're already pretty balanced from the factory. Um, so it's all coming in this motion in the firing pattern, and that it's a very simple little gear oil pump, and it just causes things to be a little shaky. But
Mm-hmm.
when you want to be a lunatic and spin to 9,000 RPMs, you do that.
Mhm.
And a recommendation for that, Permatex makes orange. It's orange like Loctite.
Mhm.
It holds, it has the hold strength of red, but it has the removability of blue. So, hot tip.
Hmm.
Dip your whole front end in that if you have a K series car.
I got a feeling it's going to end up in our garage by Tuesday.
It's already ordered. It's not a problem.
You
So, go ahead.
you get more by I think 25 fluid ounces is the biggest that they sell on Amazon. By the way, how did race cars ever get built without Amazon? Not to sidetrack anything, but
I don't think they got made anywhere near as quickly.
pre-Amazon, I don't know what you guys did, but kudos to you because I can't live without it. So,
I think we get something almost every day.
yep.
So, especially after I talk to somebody who knows what they're doing, it's like, okay, need to order that and need to
Yep.
order that. What about if we go back to the Academy Award winning film slash documentary uh, starring Tom Cruise as Cole Trickle.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, I believe the term that they invented in there was Rebens racing. What happens, eventually when you're doing wheel to wheel, two cars decide to occupy the same space. Sometimes due to driver error, sometimes due to conditions, sometimes due to one of the cars being driven by Lance Stroll. Uh, you know, these things happen
Yep. Yep.
eventually. Um,
Eventually.
you know, sometimes it's your fault, sometimes it's both people's fault, and sometimes it's the other person's fault. But
Mhm.
what 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 would be a typical way of dealing with that immediately and then dealing with that to get back on track?
Well, in NASA, per the
Yes.
rules, if you're still able to run, you complete your race. If you're unable to run, you'll get pulled in. But as soon as you enter the track, you may go to impound, but you will need to visit impound/tech anyway, and or registration depending on your region because you need to fill out a body contact form.
Hmm.
Pretty sure this is universal.
And pull
And
your video, right?
yep, and pull your video, bring your car because they're going to want to see where the contact was actually made, not taking anybody's word for it. Sometimes it's hard to see on video. You'll be visiting the compliance director in NASA anyway, and they will make a ruling. You can appeal the ruling. You can up to nationals. But if you follow all the rules and you read your CCR and you're doing what you're supposed to be doing, sometimes stuff still happens. You're going to get a point on your license because you were involved in the incident, whether you were at fault or not.
In
So,
SEC?
Both.
no, in NASA, I
Oh, in NASA. Okay.
probably in SCCA too. I don't know. Um, but bump drafting isn't cause for body contact form. It's the unwanted contact. They have to go over that a lot with you. Spec me out of drivers, Vicky. So, but one of the biggest things is it's no longer in your hands.
Right.
You're coming off the track. I've been on. I got hit by a Miata. Go figure. They don't know how to drive. Uh, and I came in, showed my stuff, filled out my form, and showed my video. Went through compliance. They said it was a racing incident. I had a problem with that, and I said malarkey. And they go, well, this corner called you in. And I was like, look at my video. I'm not in that corner. There was a melee. The sky opened up in the chute at Summit Point, and everybody went through the 5/8 expressway except for me because I still have ABS. So I was like, "Ooh." I turned my windshield wiper on. I said, maybe I should slow a little early this time. So I did. My ABS kicked in. I made the turn. I made a couple turns, and then I got hit with by a Miata who was re-entering the track and couldn't turn. So, but cooler heads prevail. You don't have to agree, but always just understand that stuff happens.
Hmm.
It's highly unlikely that they intentionally hit you. Usually they're apologetic. And if you're at fault or you think you're at fault or get found at fault, just apologize. But racing's racing and it's your bill to take care of, whether it's your fault or not. Everybody takes care of their own cars, and that's how it works. Um, and it happens, you know.
So
Not
endurance
about if,
racing. What?
it's
Mhm.
about when.
Yeah, it's going to happen. So at lower level endurance racing, let's deal with that before
Yep.
we get too crazy, because upper level endurance racing gets weird. Um, Lemons, any contact you're supposed to self-report. If there's any
Mhm.
contact, you're supposed to get a black flag if you don't self-report, which will be treated a little more harshly than if you did self-report. Lemon's rule is two people hit, doesn't matter, you're both at fault.
Okay.
It's just, it's your fault whether you were literally sitting still and somebody drove into you. It's still your fault. Um, Both of you go in. Usually, if it's the first time having any black flags, it's just what's going on? Are you okay? Okay, go. As your black flags mount for the weekend,
Mhm.
you will get longer and longer talking tos and or penalties. Could be as much as parking your car for the rest of the day or the rest of the event, depending on how successful you are in doing things that are not wanted on track. But always, if there's a bump, uh, if you can find the other car, you should go over and talk to the people in a nice way,
Mhm.
especially if you feel like it's your fault, and apologize. Sometimes if the track is cold, bring a beverage of choice. And see. That does not mean that the other party will reciprocate or be receptive to your conversation, because sometimes people get a little red misty, and just you may say an apology, or you may just turn around and walk away because things
You
could
have to
go
let it
worse.
cool off a little bit, then come back.
Yes. So
Yeah.
But you need to go over. You really do.
nobody, and we're talking a very, very, very small percent. Like, I'm not saying zero, but it's many decimals. Nobody hits your car on purpose.
No.
I mean, I can count the number of times I've seen it in the racing that we do. That it does happen, but it's usually didn't see you is probably number one,
Mhm.
followed closely by ran out of talent, number two, or red misty. And I am the gift to the racing gods, and I will show you my skill. And you know,
Or a varying percentage of those three
yeah, for sure.
Mm.
Or
combined. Yeah.
conditions too. Like Khan
Mhm.
mentioned, when the Ren come down, sometimes people don't realize that the shiny part with the puddle on it is not where you want to be. You might want to be on the rather matte side with no water shining in your face. That's a good plan in general.
Mhm.
Some others uh, will be different depending on the track. I would say mid Ohio doesn't matter, but it's repaved and I haven't been there yet. Uh, Nobody wants to hit each other. Nobody really wants to do body work, because there's a reason why body work costs so much. It sucks to do, and
Yeah.
it's no fun, and it doesn't make your car go faster, and it doesn't make your car run better. It just makes your car look somewhat presentable. So avoid it whenever possible. Just, it's not worth it. But
Mm-mm.
so let's pretend we had some incident. We had a contact. You're at the track. How do you respond if you're going to try to get back out there, or run the next race, or get back on the track for endurance racing, or try to get the next maybe race tomorrow? What's your typical practice, or what do you see typically done in your racing, Con?
Um, but cooler heads will prevail. If you have anger, you need to get rid of it because
All of it.
it's not going to, all of it, because it's not going to help you the next time you turn the wheel. It's just not. Um, y- we all need to understand that it's going to happen no matter what. And so try to be cool about it. Um,
If you're still
everything,
angry, don't go out on track.
yes, for sure. Don't do that. But also when you're doing your repairs, make sure that they're high level repairs. And if you don't want to bolt control arms on questionably, you don't want to uh have a suspension geometry that's questionable, right?
Mm.
So be smart about it, because you could do more damage solo and or collect another car that didn't deserve it. So you need to have that, in my opinion, that track family that says, "Oh, we saw what happened, sorry, let's help you." And while you're dealing with whatever just occurred, they can help assess the issue.
Mm-hmm.
Um, some of them have been there themselves. Some of them work in shops. Some of them own shops. Some of them do desk jobs, but they happen to know more about suspension work, right? And so if something's bent too much, just don't go back out there. It's honestly, if you want your tub to last, unlike my first car, you got to go get it fixed the right way. And some people are really they have a lot of pride. They take a lot of pride in saying, "Oh, well, we put a ratchet strap on the telephone pole in the paddock and we pulled it out." Okay, that might have got you that event, but depending on how bad it is, it would not solve the problem in the long term.
Mm-mm.
So,
No.
if you plan on doing it long term, be truthful with yourself and say, "We're good to go," or "We're not good to go, and I need to start making phone calls." One of the big things that I did, even I was solo, my brake failed, I hit something. I started calling people that I know, right? I was like, "Hey, I need to get in." I know multiple people with that own body shops, and I was like, "Hey, I need parts and I need them painted, and I have a short turnaround. It's for the race car. Can you help me?" And some responded and said yes, and some said, "No way, we're too busy. We can't even fit you in on the side."
Mm-hmm.
So you got to start reaching out, and you got to build that network, and you build the network in the good times and you use the network in the bad times. And
100%.
when even in the good times, when you're building that network, you're building that network through helping other people.
Mhm.
And I think that's the most important thing. So,
Right. And make sure, like, if it's body work or a fender or something that's semi-cosmetic, semi-structural, or a broken splitter or a broken wing or something like that, make sure it's structurally sound and your
mhm,
solution is suitable. Like if you've got a fender that, you know, a couple of the attachment points are broken, I can see going at it with gaffer's tape. I could see racer's tape. I could see, holding that together. But like Con said, if it's a suspension component or an axle or something, as Vicky says, that goes a ratchet strap is not a short-term solution. It's not a solution at all. It might get you on the trailer. Okay, I could go with on the
mhm.
trailer, but it's not getting you on the track.
Mm-hmm.
And don't take a broken splitter out there because you're just going to send a shard of whatever it's made of towards one of your friends that's out on the track because it's going to come off. And,
Mm-hmm.
just be smart about it, even if you're angry.
That's where the body work does get you faster, Bill.
Oh, I know.
Because when you break that splitter, you got no choice but to build another one, and you can build a better one.
Mm-hmm.
So,
Mo bigger, mo better.
Right?
yes.
Ah,
And
Con.
the follow-up to it all. I'm just
Yes.
going to say a very good friend told me that you never learn from a car that's not broken. I'm just going to tell you.
Well, we learned a lot then.
Yes.
That's absolutely true, and
Mm-hmm.
and I can tell you the best way to fix your car is to also have the right attitude. So
Mm-hmm.
you can start preparing yourself now by understanding that it's not if but when, and
Mm-hmm.
then be that helping hand now, because you're going to earn those helping hands later. So,
All right. So, last category for tonight, I think. Good way to
okay.
wrap this up. what about the car's not broken, but it's not doing what you need? Like, Con, you had a car
Hmm.
that I would say you characterized with just three words. It just won't turn. And you battled
Yep.
that for a long time. You're still kind of battling it now.
We're not, well, I mean, so the race I broke, I qualified within half-ish second of the pole position. And in my region, that's pretty darn good. So it's
Mm-hmm.
not necessarily still bad. It just needs tweaks.
Mhm.
Um,
But that wasn't a go out to the local O'Reilly's and get a new set of
oh
spark plugs.
no, 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 no. Um, when the car is not doing what you want it to do, whether it's handling or maybe it's not putting the power down it's supposed to, you need to go seek guidance, whether that's reading yourself or finding gurus, suspension folks, tuners, whatever that is, and start gathering advice. Because my car was a turning issue. I
Mm.
had on the, if you go to the 8th/9th gen Civic forum, racing forum, or group on Road Race Autocross, 99.9% of them run this setup. And on my car, it was plowing like a big rig on in the winters in the Northeast. It just wanted to shove
You were
straight
going through
ahead.
tires, like bananas tires.
Yes, and 17-inch tires are expensive, and I didn't like buying them every event. So, um, I had to solve this issue, and I talked to a lot of people. And my buddy Darren, who also found the busted issue with with my uh tub last on the last car, he said, take a swing, try a spring change in the rear, see what happens. And I did. And I don't run a setup that anyone else runs. And my car turns about 90, it's about 95% there.
Mm-hmm.
I think there's another 2 or 3% in high speed corners. It's still pushing in high speed corners, but it's also obnoxiously faster in those corners
Mm-hmm.
right now than it was in the past. So I'm not complaining too much, but if I could get it a little rotation, I could get another mile an hour or two. And then getting the car settled to be consistent is the other 2 to 1%. And that's an expensive change in dampers. So,
Right. But
um,
but that wasn't a one weekend or a two weekend
oh no,
process
it
for
was
you.
like a 2 year process
Easily.
easily. Yeah. 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 I mean, we bolted it on at the end of last year, during one test slash HPDE weekend. It started working. I didn't want to burn down the tires that I had, because they're expensive and sometimes hard to get a hold of. So,
Mm-hmm.
my size is not very common, apparently. It's in between what like spec 46 runs and
Hmm.
then what spec 3 runs. And so there's not a ton of demand for my size. So, I don't think they only make 1 or 2 runs, Toyo are ours.
Mm-hmm.
They only make 1 or 2 runs a year in this size. So when they come in stock, I have to buy them. Um, yeah. And they don't come in stock until after my first event, usually. So I had to save what I had.
Right.
Anyway, we knew it was going to turn and then we were going to make tweaks. And I I have a two-step philosophy. I run at 2 tracks basically, Summit Point and Virginia International Raceway. It did fine at VIR, and then I will confirm data at Summit Point. I wasn't able to confirm the data. Well, I couldn't confirm the data, but I didn't gather as much data as I wanted. And then I would make tweaks. And then I would change it for Hyperfest, which is our next event at Hyperfest or at VIR. And then those tweaks would get confirmed again in June at Summit Point. I'll make more tweaks. It's just how I work. I don't do one racetrack, then the next racetrack, then the next racetrack. I do both my home tracks and then I reset. So I, but I was too busy fixing bodywork and building cheater splitters thanks to occamsracers.com and Mario. So shout out to him.
Right.
So that I haven't made my tweaks. So we'll see.
So I guess the takeaway for that would be one, the expectation that, even if you have just one knob selected, that one knob can take you a very long
Hmm.
time. And if you don't even know which knob to turn, it could take you a very long time to figure this out, especially if you try to do it by yourself.
Yeah, especially by yourself, especially when uh the world, aka the internet, says this is how the car is run. Pro teams run it this way. Okay. I don't know how they run it that way, but it doesn't work for me.
Mm-hmm.
And so you don't be afraid of stepping outside the box and making a change. On the suspension side, my recommendation is to make a change on the easiest side of the car, um, because you can bring your old stuff with you. And if it doesn't work out on a Saturday, by Saturday evening, track's cold, adult beverages are out. Put your old stuff back in if it's worse. If you're really gung ho, you can probably do it between qualifying in a race or practice in a race or whatever. But you have to try different things. If what everyone says works isn't working, you just have to do something different. And it's okay. Trust me, it's okay.
And it could be even longer if you decide to be a trailblazer. Like if you are going with a new platform or something that hasn't been solved, let's use solved with quotes because we all know that just because it
It's
worked for
never
one
solved.
team, it
Right.
doesn't work for all teams. Um, if you're the first person, or if you have a car that doesn't have a lot of aftermarket support,
Hmm.
plan on that at least doubling, if not quadrupling or 10 times as long, because you're not going to have a lot of choices and you're probably going to end up fabricating your own stuff
Hmm.
or trying to work with somebody who does this on professionally and they're going to try to expand into that line, but they're not there yet. So everybody's going to need to learn a whole bunch and
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
it could take forever. And even if you do solve it, you're never done. So it can always be better.
Well, so for people who don't have support, there are tools and measurements you can do to say do roll center corrections and things like that, um, or add camber caster. There are ways to do it. There are established designs. You just have to make it fit your vehicle. So
Mm-hmm.
don't reinvent the whole wheel. Pick the wheel that looks like it would fit the best and then look to engineer that for your vehicle. But don't be afraid to measure your roll center and bump steer and stuff like that, and then do the math to see where you need to make a change. A lot of times it's the replacement uh, of your ball joint and you use a Heim joint instead and some spacers. Well, you don't actually have to do that. The four-wheel drive community does that all day long. Know your thread pitches, know your bolt sizes, and then know what spacers you need. And they make spherical spacers, and it's actually kind of cheap. So don't go too crazy reinventing the wheel. And then when you're working on the suspension, work one side at a time or one half, front or back half at a time. And like I said, work the easiest side first and see if you can get it to handle or do what you want it to do. So,
Hmm. And sometimes when you're doing that, one thing I would say is usually you want to take fairly large swings. Like you don't want to make little fine micro adjustments to start with because you can't tell.
mhm.
And I forgot what the other one was.
Well, I can tell you, everyone has told me that with shocks, So, I mean, I can't imagine the S10 had three-way motons on it, right?
I don't like to brag about them, but no.
Ah,
So, when you start dabbling, when you upgrade from a non-adjustable or a single adjustable and you start going to double adjustables, I was told to do two or three clicks at a time, do some laps. It does take an experienced racer, but essentially you're looking to make your adjustments until you feel the loss of traction and then you back it off two turns. So when you go and this is it's universal for every car. It's the same way to attack shocks. So when you're tuning your dampers, that's how they do it. Now, spring changes, that's a whole nother ballgame. I totally believe in big swings in the wrong direction or the other direction, not wrong.
Mhm. Yeah. And I remember where I was going. One of the things that we try to do, and I don't know if you're going to agree with me or not, Con, but I don't do testing at races. I do testing when I'm testing. It- the racing, concentrated racing, take the best you have. I mean, obviously you can change your tire pressure, and obviously, you can change your camber if you want, as long as you know what you're doing and you have some history. But when you're trying to solve a problem or dial in a car, a race is not the time to do it.
mm-mm.
The actual race, no. So, but I'll tell you, um, we do not this month because the car was broken, but we do a HPDE slash practice day every month, okay, before the race event.
Right.
And we are making changes there. But again, I will still, if I want more spring rate or less spring rate, even after the practice day, I will do that, put it on for a Saturday, run my practice, my qualifying, and my race, take that data, look at it, and then revise it on Sunday. I'm either going back to where I was
Right.
or I'm staying where I am that Sunday evening or Saturday evening. And that's the only change I would make. So I would keep your Saturdays open because track time gets expensive.
Mm.
But experimenting with lines and predictability, that ends after the practice, in my
Mhm.
opinion.
Mhm.
Right. So
Unfortunately,
go ahead.
unfortunately, that for low level racing, that is the only time you get to practice. But if you can run your cars at an HPDE and do a
Hmm.
testing, it's a lot cheaper to have your friends in and out of that than it would be to drive it to the track because that's a whole weekend that you could have been wasting.
Mhm.
But
Racing is
definitely.
racing. Testing is testing in my mind.
Hmm.
Yes.
And that doesn't
Oh,
mean you can't dial in at the race, but I'm not going to be doing, if I've got a 24 click damper, I'm not going to do one race at one race at 24 and one race at 12 and then start,
no,
that is not the time.
No.
no, no, no. Absolutely not. But also another side note, if you're doing testing days during HPD events, insure your race car for those events.
Yeah.
Okay.
I, you can't insure it on a race weekend, but there's no reason to hang it out and risk it in a HPD weekend, in my opinion. It's too cheap not to. And
Mhm.
I don't even get a commission. I'm not an insurance person, but
And you
uh,
didn't stay at Holiday Inn Express last night.
sure did not. No, I was at home.
Mm.
So yeah, I it's I have a lot tied into my car. I don't
Hmm.
know about you guys, but I have a lot of money tied into my car. I understand the risks when I'm racing and $250 extra for an HPDE day to weekend s- to cover my car at the price that I want. Sign me up. I'll do it.
Yep.
So,
Indeed. You know what's the most fun part about doing these episodes? We finish them. We're like,
mhm.
yeah, high five. We do the virtual post goodbye. Nice job. We
Right.
release it when it comes out, and a listener writes in and goes, "You dummies. You forgot. And it's like, so if we have succeeded in doing that yet again, please let us know. Right into our podcast, right into the Blind Apex podcast. I'm sure Khan would love to talk about these things more.
Yeah, why not?
Exactly.
Garage Heroes in Training at gmail.com.
That too.
Yeah.
And
The Blind Apex podcast at gmail.com.
there it is. I was going to say,
Okay.
is your next event Hyperfest, sir?
It is during recording. We are 10 days away, and my splitter is not built yet. So,
Do we have the raw materials?
yes,
Okay.
we do.
I was going to say, if not, I'm running them down tomorrow.
Oh no, I have the one thing isn't here, but Amazon's bringing it to me. Thanks, Jeff Bezos.
Really? Thank you, Jeff. Jeff,
Yeah.
sponsoring our podcast and racing team. Actually, he probably should with the stuff we buy.
Right?
Whew. That's at least
Yeah.
one large boat of his. Hopefully
For
not.
sure.
Hopefully not. His boats are very big. So
Maybe the lifeboat on one of his
yeah,
boats.
maybe the lifeboat for the lifeboat. Yeah.
Right.
Well, unfortunately, we are not, as we speak, on the one lap of America, but that kind of fell through at the end and fell through too late for us to be at Hyperfest. However, there's a chance. There's a chance we might do a drive down just for a day, flop in, flop out. So we may see you there.
Get a hotel room, not in Danville.
No, not in Danville. I know that.
Yeah.
So we shall see.
Yeah, it's
Our-
useless. It'll be good
May
to
is
see you guys,
ridiculous.
though.
Yes,
Yeah.
it would be quite good. Our May is ridiculous. It's like everything that could possibly happen is happening in May. Who knows? Well, sir,
Yep.
thank you again for coming on.
Thank you guys for having me. I
Thank
appreciate
you.
it.
One more step towards that free hoodie. Da, 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 da.
It's not a gold jacket. Jaime
Not a-
told me it was a gold jacket.
No, not a gold jacket.
Okay.
We have one gold jacket.
It's like
and
Hall of Fame status.
It is, but we're following more the Saturday Night Live mode as opposed to the NFL mode.
Okay, that's fair.
Don't want anybody to get CTE from our podcast. So the only thing we want is for you to sleep better. Good night, everybody.
Good night.